morning, everybody. Man, there's a weird shadow going on in there. That is strange. I think. You tell me. Ooh, I'm a little sunburned too. Look at that. All right. Well, I hope it's showing up okay. It looks weird on my end, so check this. Hang on. Maybe it's just the... Maybe it's just how Facebook's doing it this morning. I don't know. Hey, if you're on here, let me know if it looks okay, because I can't tell. It looks like right here, there's a big shadow of something. So hopefully it looks all right. If not, I guess today will be a weird one. Not doing anything different than I normally do, so I don't know if it's my phone, my camera. Hey, it is Tuesday, May, what is that, 16th, 17th, 18th, May 18th. Oh my gosh, school is coming to an end. Students are getting excited. Parents are getting probably trying to figure out summer plans of, childcare and what are we going to do. But hey, it's a great time. Summertime is a great time. If you hop on here, please say hello. Please let me know where you're watching from. If you are watching this not live, but you're watching this later, please, hey Penny, thank you so much for saying that. I hope it looks all right. It is very weird. Like right here, there's this line on my phone, so I don't know what's going on. Anyways, if you are watching this now or later, please let me know where you're watching it from. We want to see how far this really goes. Honestly, we love. I mean, we know it's the World Wide Web, but it's really cool when it reaches the world. So whether you're in the Houston area or whether you are across the globe, across the pond, as it were, please say hello and let us know. This morning, well, May 18th, I didn't do a weather update. It's raining. If you're in Houston, it's raining, and it's going to rain, I think. Well, here's the deal. It rained all day yesterday, and I think it has to stop in 38 more days because God said he would not let it rain 40 days and 40 nights. Again, that was his promise. So we know that it has to stop in 38 days. So we don't know when it's going to stop, but it'll at least stop then. Yeah, it rained a ton yesterday. Big storm. Super cool to me. I love the weather. So, but it's nice and warm out there. So get outside, enjoy the weather. Try to stay dry. Maybe pack a kayak. I don't know. Penny, watching from New Hampshire. Awesome. I've been to New Hampshire, I think, once in my life, so it's beautiful up there. So thanks for joining in. I'm gonna have some coffee this morning, and I'm gonna be looking at Genesis 22. We're gonna be looking at Abraham, and we're gonna look at believing promises of God. I told you, well, 2 weeks ago. Last week I was out of town and just did not have the opportunity to get on here. Then we're going to be looking at the word believe a lot throughout the scripture. And we looked a lot last week in Mark 16. This week we're going to look in Genesis 22, just believing promises. Abraham, the father of faith, is as we call him, as we know him. He is the father of faith. He's the one that we attribute. Well, we see that God attributed him righteous because he believed, because he had faith. And in Genesis 12 is when he actually gets his promise from God. So he's 75 years old, roughly. And he gets the promise from God of, go out, look at the stars. I'm going to make your descendants as numerous as the stars, as numerous as the sands on the seashore. I will bless whoever blesses you. I will curse whoever curses you. And all nations will be blessed through your descendants. So God's giving him that promise. God's letting him know, I am starting my covenant with you. And in that promise, he prophesied Jesus. He prophesied all nations will be blessed because of your descendants. He's prophesying Jesus coming on the cross and making a way for all people to be God's chosen people. And in that, also, that's where we get that we should be praying for Israel and blessing Israel, because it says, anyone who blesses you and your descendants, Abraham, I will bless. Actually, it was Abram at the time. Anyone who curses you, I will curse. So that's why we pray for Israel. And listen, right now, if you guys have been watching the news, We have got to be praying for Israel right now. I mean, always we've got to be praying for Israel, but they're under attack. God's going to protect them, but we want to make sure and join in that prayer for them. Because, I mean, there's a lot going on over there, and I know God will protect Israel, but they are getting attacked. So that means some things and potentially people, or maybe people are being harmed. So let's be praying for them. So Genesis 12, Abram gets the promise. Genesis 22, we're going to pick it up there. That is where, Abraham takes Isaac to sacrifice him. Okay? I'm just going to start reading. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, here I am, he answered. Take your son, he said, your only son Isaac, whom you love. Go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about. By the way, your only son Isaac, in the Hebrew, that means unique. Okay, because we know that Abraham had another son, Ishmael, when he took things into his own hands. But Isaac was the promise. Isaac was the promise from God, right? And remember, he was 75 when he got the promise. He didn't have any kids. He's 100 years old when he has Isaac. So 25 years he goes through going, man, I've got this promise. I have no way to fulfill this promise. And Isaac comes when he's 100 years old. And that description right there, take your son, he said, your only son Isaac. In the original language, that means your unique son, the promise. It's the same description in John 3:16 of Jesus when it says God gave his only begotten son. That word begotten means unique. So it's the same. Abraham and Isaac is a picture of right here of God the Father and of Jesus. So Abraham got up early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took with him 2 of his young men and his son Isaac. He split wood for a burnt offering and set out to go to the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Then Abraham said to his young men, stay here, listen to this, stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there to worship. Then we'll come back to you. Abraham right there is already going, no, Isaac is my promise. So I'm gonna be obedient. I'm gonna be obedient to what God has called me to do. But listen, he knew God could do something. He knew God could do something that would allow his promise to be fulfilled. He's having faith. He doesn't know how. It doesn't make any sense to him, but he's going to be obedient. And he declares, my son Isaac and I will be right back. That's amazing right there. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and laid it on his son Isaac. In his hand he took the fire and the knife, and the 2 of them walked on together. Then Isaac spoke to his father, Abraham, and said, my father. And he replied, here I am, my son. Isaac said, the fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham answered, here we go, another step of faith. God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. I believe right there he's saying in this moment, nope, God's going to provide. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how it's going to happen, but God's going to do it. But I also think that was prophetic, that he's prophesying the lamb, Jesus, to be slain for the offering, for the actual offering. Then the 2 of them walked on together. When they arrived at the place that God had told him about, Abraham built the altar there, arranged the wood. He bound his son Isaac, placed him on the altar on the top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. He replied, here I am. Then he said, do not lay a hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your only son from me. And then that's when he saw the ram. That's when he went over, took the ram, and sacrificed the ram, and did not sacrifice Isaac. So here's a couple of things that we want to look at. Abraham has a promise from God 25 years ago. He's believing for that promise. Then he has his son Isaac. And so his son Isaac, he knows, is the promise. Isaac is the one that God is going to use to give him descendants that are more numerous than the stars. Okay? God calls him to sacrifice his unique son, his one and only son, his only son, right? I said one and only because that's what they said of Jesus. His unique son. Which is exactly that God is calling him to do something that is exactly the opposite of his promise. A lot of times we get a promise from God and then maybe God is asking us to do something. We're like, wait. No, I have this promise from you, but now you're asking me to do this over here. And that's completely the opposite of what the promise is. Why would I do that? And Abraham is our picture of how to believe promises. We just go. We just believe that God will provide a way. And in that moment, he's about to sacrifice. He's about to kill his promise. He's about to slaughter his promise. Not only that, it's his only son. But he's about to slaughter his promise. He's about to take the promise of God that he has and just literally kill it. But he's going to do it anyways because God will provide. That's what he said. God will provide the lamb for the burnt offering. I don't know how it's going to work. Maybe he was thinking, well, God can do anything. He can raise Isaac from the dead. Maybe he was thinking, well, he'll stop me, but I'm going to go until he stops me. Who knows what Abraham's thinking in that moment? But he was faithful. He just kept believing. No, God will do something. I don't know what it will be. God will do something. So here's the thing. We have to get promises from God. First of all, we have a book full of promises. Okay? So we start here. But I'm an advocate in prayer, asking God for promises in our life. Asking God, okay, God, what do you have for me that's going to call me to where you want me to be? See, it's not about me getting promises from God. It's about me having a relationship with God and God calling God calling you to things that are bigger than you, things that you're not qualified for, things that you can't do. God will always call you to something that you can't do because his strength is made perfect in our weakness. So he will always call us beyond our comfort zone. He will always call us beyond our abilities. Always, always, always. The second that we think, God, I can't do this, then we're probably in the right spot. Okay? I mean, you want to pray about it and make sure you're in the right spot, but more than likely you're in the right spot because God will always call us farther and deeper than we can go because that's the God we serve, right? So we've got to get those promises from God. When we get those promises from God, now we know promises can be signs to look for along the way. Promises can be things that we need to accomplish the things that God is calling us to. Promises are a lot less about us getting things from God, and they're more about us fulfilling what God has called us to. And when we get a promise, we just have to be obedient to God and believing that promise. See, in that moment, Abraham, he's believing God for his promise. But he's also walking in obedience to what God is asking him to do right there. So he's taking a step. God, I'm doing this. Unless you stop me, unless you raise him from the dead, whatever Abraham's thinking. Maybe he's not thinking anything like that. Maybe Abraham has taken a real childlike faith. He's the father of faith, so probably. And just going, I'm just going to do what God calls me to do. And I'm going to be obedient to that. And he can stop me. He can keep me going. But he's going to provide the way. And that is how we believe promises. So we have to go and pray and get with God, understand who we are in Christ, understand the promises that we have, understand the calling understand the calling that we have on God. And then we have to get the promises from God to help us walk those promises out. And then at that point, once we have those things, now we have things to believe. Now we have things with God. Believing, having faith in God. Now we have those promises to believe and we walk in faith and we just keep walking in faith. And all that means is we're going to be obedient. Whatever God asks us to do, we're going to be obedient. And when we're obedient, God will always provide the way. He will get us where we need to go. And that is believing promises. And I could go into more detail of personal stories. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I've been, 100% on walking it out, and definitely not 100% on always having faith and believing and being in good moods and all of that. But there's been a couple of times that God has called us to step out as a family with the promise of tomorrow, but with no circumstances within the promise of tomorrow. It didn't look anything like we had the ability, we were going to have the opportunity to fulfill the promise, but we did it anyways, and God came through. I mean, in a big way. Maybe we'll talk about that next week. But here's what I want to encourage you with. You have a calling on your life. Everybody does. You have a calling on your life. You have gifts that God has given you, and you have promises. And so I want to encourage you today, if you know those promises, think about those promises, pray on those promises. If you don't know those promises, then go to God and ask him, Lord, what kind of promises do you have for me to accomplish what you called me to do? Or God, what have you called me to do? And write that down, write it down, and then just walk in faith in that, walk in belief that God is going to bring you to where he has called you has called you and will bring you to where he's called you. So that's it. And as you walk today and you have those promises, man, just know that you have a Father in heaven that loves you, and he does have plans for you, plans to prosper you, not plans for your demise. If you think things aren't going well and it's going to be to your demise, that's not the plan and promise of God. He's got plans for you for your good. So just remember that. Have a great day. Man, we will see you next week. Scott, what's going on this morning? Good to see you. If I missed your name pop up on the comments, I apologize. They were kind of scrolling a little fast. But again, if you're on here, let us know where you're watching from. Man, love you guys, and we will see you next week. Bye.